Leave the World Behind, now streaming on Netflix, was written and directed by Sam Esmail, creator of Mr. Robot, based on the book by Rumaan Alam. It's about a family, including Julia Roberts and Ethan Hawke and their kids, who all go to their rented vacation house. But then weird stuff starts happening. And then the home's actual owners, Mahershala Ali and his daughter Myha'la Herol, decide to take shelter with them because of all this. But they may not be leaving soon because they're slowly finding out that the world might be ending. Despite the apocalyptic premise, it's pretty low on action. It's more concerned with them trying to survive together in the house, just trying to pass by while knowing that everything is probably not going to go back to normal. The cast is great and they don't half-ass these performances. And there is tension for a lot of it, like with the appearance of deer who just kinda gather around ominously, like the birds. It is unfortunately a little slow and maybe a bit overlong at almost 2.5 hours, but I never really found it to be boring, just seeing these people try to deal with the apocalypse. But I guess it could probably be trimmed a little to make it tighter. But otherwise, this is an interesting apocalyptic thriller. It may be a little slow for some, but it has great performances and some good social commentary. And it turns out I don't have as much to say about this as I thought I did. My feelings for it are kinda like The Killer, a slow thriller that still somehow didn't bore me despite having that effect on others. Another movie that's only slightly too good for Netflix. I like The Killer more though.
Out of the ground in time. This is not an exercise.
One millisecond takes you beyond imagining, beyond tomorrow, and into the day after.
Experience a magical movie phenomenon embraced by all the world.
Let's go!
This fall, prepare to be spirited away.
The Boy and the Heron is yet another final movie from writer and director Hayao Miyazaki before yet another retirement. It was released in Japan with no information about it being promoted, so audiences went in completely blind. Unfortunately, the rest of the world had a decent amount of details and images in the promotional material. I was kind of unsure whether or not I should include that kind of stuff in my review in case there are people who haven't seen any of the trailers or whatever, but I've decided to just include the trailer in the background and I guess be sparse with the plot details in my actual commentary. What's it about? It's about a boy and a heron. Or maybe the heron's just a metaphor. Maybe the boy's just a metaphor. Who knows? Although I will say that this was the second weekend in a row that a Japanese fantasy movie that starts with the main character getting his life ruined by World War II premiered in America to great success. This movie takes a surprisingly long time to go into the full-blown fantasy mode that you see in the trailers and much of Miyazaki's other work. It starts off slow, but the fantasy elements are there in a magical realism kind of way, and it's still as interesting as any other movie with a similar setup. And to make this section any shorter would make the beginning of his actual journey not have as much of an impact. But either way, the fantasy elements are as great as you'd expect from a Miyazaki film. They look amazing, it looks beautiful when it needs to and unsettling when it needs to, and the bizarre worlds that he builds are still as great as always. Some parts of the story are just a little confusing, but it's not enough to take away from how it made me feel. It is definitely charming and beautiful. It's a parable for growing up as well as accepting loss, and it works in that way too. Disclaimer, I'm a poser. I saw the dubbed version, but only because that showing worked better for my schedule, and also because the dub has a great voice cast featuring Robert Pattinson, Willem Dafoe, Christian Bale, Florence Pugh, Mark Hamill, and Dave Bautista. I don't know how the voice acting is in the Japanese version, but here it's still good. I mean, voice casts do sometimes make the dubs worth watching, like when I watched Howl's Moving Castle on Max. About halfway through watching the dub, I decided, what the hell am I doing? I'm pretty sure there's a subbed version here. But I ended up switching it back because I decided I could not live without seeing Billy Crystal as Calcifer. Sorry, but I prefer my fire demons to sound like Mike Wazowski and not some slightly annoying high-pitched child voice. No offense to that guy. I unfortunately am not as well versed in the works of Miyazaki as I would like. I loved what I've seen from him, but I just haven't really gotten around to seeing a lot of his work. I usually forget and watch something else that I'm 99.999% sure I won't like nearly as much as the Studio Ghibli movie I would have watched instead. This is not quite as good as some of his best, but that is a ridiculously high standard for anybody to strive for. This is still a borderline masterpiece. Earlier this year, I've said that Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse was the movie to beat for my favorite of the year. I walked into this half convinced that this would beat it. Maybe if I didn't think that, I wouldn't even be entertaining this idea right now. But since I was, I think it might be my new favorite. It's at least on par or very close to it. I can't tell if it's as visually stunning as that one. I don't even know if it's as entertaining or interesting. Okay, come to think of it, it's probably not as visually stunning. But either way, both of those things are at least pretty damn close. In the long run, I pretty much just gave this the edge because at least it has an ending. Is that fair to the movie that has too much story to pack into one installment? I don't know, but it is what it is. This is probably my new favorite movie of the year. One animated masterpiece beating out another. An amazing farewell from one of the greatest animators alive.